Big Boss Jock Radio Show. Analyst assessment. Video clip. CBS this morning posted the clip. Local leaders push back against Trump's expected U.S. U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement raids. The clip is 3 minutes, 7 seconds. It's gonna roll. Here we go. Get ready for the show.
Beginning tomorrow, federal agents will begin a nationwide...
Beginning tomorrow, U.S. federal agents will
effort to arrest immigrants who have been...
will begin to arrest illegal migrants.
Issued final deportation
orders.
Raids will be targeted in 10 major cities.
The raids will be carried out in 10 major U.S. cities.
And will focus mainly on Central American families
illegal migrant families who crossed into the U.S. territory illegally.
The U.S. border with Mexico. President Trump says the crackdown is meant to remove criminals from the country.
U.S. President Don states that the raids will be carried out to remove illegal migrants from the U.S. territory.
But the leaders in some of these cities are pushing back against the effort.
But the leaders in some of these U.S. cities are pushing back against the U.S. president.
Laura Podesta is here with more. Laura, good morning.
Laura Podesta is here in the studio, CBS this morning. Laura.
Good morning. That includes the mayor here in New York
City. The listener, and this has been described, if they want to know more, there's pages upon pages at the U.S. Copyright, and they've been there for a couple years. They describe the techniques. Here is another word that's often used to condition the viewer to associate to here instead of the name of the location. And when they don't know the name of the location, they associate with here, and every place is here.
Along with the supervisor of Los Angeles County, the mayor of San Francisco.
The supervisor of Los Angeles County. I didn't know there was a supervisor of Los Angeles County. That's interesting. The county supervisor. Okay.
Francisco, as well as the governor of California.
Oh, the leaders of the autonomous, soon to be declared autonomous region of California. Let's hear. These are the ones that are going to stand up to the U.S. federal government. All planned by the USDIA.
Yeah. Now, this sweep is similar in scope to those carried out by Immigration and Customs.
Now, the scope of these raids that is carried out by U.S. immigration. Every time they say immigration officials, U.S. immigration officials is what should be stated.
Enforcement, or ICE, since 2003.
ICE should not be used. U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement. U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement. There's nothing identifying ICE as pertaining to the United States of America.
But this one is different because it's part of President Trump's plan to eventually deport millions of people.
But this one is different. No, but this, and this is what should be stated, but this illegal migration raid is different.
Here illegally.
Here illegally. In the United States of America illegally.
They're going to take people out.
They're going to take people out. Who's they? U.S. law enforcement are going to deport the illegal migrants, is what should have been stated.
They're going to bring them back to their countries.
And they are going to bring them back to their countries. Bill, grammar lesson, English grammar, 4th grade. Bill and Bob took a tour, went on a travel. He tripped. He slipped. He was hurt. Who tripped? Who slipped? Who was hurt? Them or they? Bill or Bob? It's unknown. Confusion is what goes on.
Or they're going to take criminals out, put them in prison.
Or they're going to take criminals out. Who's they? U.S. law enforcement are going to take criminals out. What type of criminals? From the California state prison system and release them? Is that what they're going to do?
prison or put them in prison in the countries they came from.
Look at the trickery used. See, and the listener pawns it all off on, oh, Don's known as being a babbling idiot. No, it's quite clever what Don says, and it's not spontaneous statements. Bozo the show, the one everyone knows, President Don. What goes on is USDIA places a computer-generated dialogue, which leaves the listener in a stupor state by the ignorant form which is used, the ignorant form of English, the obsessive use of you, they, non-identification of the themes, the trickery which goes on. Listen to that statement of Don's. We'll play it back another time. Right here on the Big Boss Jock Radio Show. You people are in peril if you're a U.S. citizen, about to lose your nation.
Take people out, and they're going to bring them back to their countries.
And they're going to bring them back to their countries.
Or they're going to...
U.S. law enforcement is going to deport the illegal migrants, returning the illegal migrants to their origin country, where either they will be set free or the illegal migrant will be further detained, depending on their background. If they have a criminal record, most likely the origin country government will further detain that illegal migrant.
Take criminals out, put them in prison, or put them in prison in the countries they came from.
President Trump describing how he envisions ICE agents will carry out.
U.S. President Trump envisions how U.S. law enforcement will carry out the deportations.
The nationwide deportation action set to begin tomorrow.
Nationwide deportation action. What's that? Isn't it a deportation of illegal migrants? The people wouldn't care. Out there, U.S. citizen, you wouldn't place much importance if, again over again, the title was used illegal migrant. Well, of course there's a consequence for the illegal migrant. They broke the law. Oh, the illegal migrant was deported? So what? That's the consequence for breaking the law.
Tomorrow.
We're focused on criminals.
Who's we? We're focused on criminals. Who's we? Don and his imaginary friend? Don and his advisors? Don with his administration? Don with the nation of the United States of America? Who's we?
As much as we can.
Administration officials say the operation is targeting about 2,000 people and in many cases entire families.
Entire illegal migrant families.
Previous crackdown.
See, the sympathy's not there when the proper title is used, illegal migrant. Well, it's logical for the listener to come up with a conclusion. The illegal migrant broke the law. They were deported. They're continuing to receive the details.
Of the same size have resulted in an arrest rate of about 10%. But as immigration enforcement has become a central...
As U.S. immigration enforcement.
Focus of the Trump administration, it's creating a pushback in some communities with...
It's creating a pushback in some immigrant communities where there is a large number of illegal migrants.
Large immigration population.
Not large immigration population. It's the immigrant neighborhoods, communities where there is a large number of illegal migrants.
New York City Mayor and presidential candidate Bill de Blasio has said the city will not help ICE in making arrests.
The mayor refuses to acknowledge U.S. federal law and is taking the matter into his own hands. He's just going to ignore U.S. federal legislation. U.S. federal law enforcement isn't going to be allowed, will not have jurisdiction in the city of New York due to a mighty mayor that has more pull than the U.S. president.
San Francisco Mayor London.
Come on, people. If the U.S. government chose to do so, they would reprimand that mayor. That mayor would either step down or learn how to better behave.
Breed reminded residents of her city of their rights. Everyone.
They don't have rights. Sure they do. As a U.S. citizen.
is guaranteed certain rights under the Constitution.
Certain rights under the U.S. Constitution.
Whether they are in this country illegally.
Whether that person might be in the United States of America illegally or not.
Or not.
California Governor Gavin Newsom did the same on Twitter.
The governor of California did the same, advising the people of their rights. They don't need to recognize the authority of the U.S. federal government. Well, when the people no longer recognize the authority of the U.S. government, federal authority of the U.S. government, well, what happens next? Defunct becomes the U.S. federal government, no longer recognized. Promoted by U.S. mainstream media.
When we talk about knowing your rights?
When we talk about knowing your rights, are you an illegal migrant, listener? Well, then why associate to you? Why wouldn't it be their rights, the illegal migrant?
Abras la puerta. And without a warrant?
Oh, he's going to speak some Spanish. The dialect used in the Western Hemisphere, known as Castellano. Soon to be Greater Mexico, the state of California. Autonomous region of California, before long, will fall into the jurisdiction of the Mexican federal government, as described by the U.S. President on Saturday, the 13th of July, 2019. 21,000 Mexican national troops were assigned to the U.S. border. That means 21,000 Mexican national troops are operating on U.S. territory.
You don't have to open the door.
You don't have to open the door for U.S. law enforcement if they happen to be implementing policy which the listener, any listeners out there, are not in accordance. So the equivalent could be said, if they're dealing drugs and DEA comes to the door, well, go ahead, just ignore DEA, because what's best for them is not to be arrested. Continue with their business, that of dealing drugs. If one law can be broken, so can another.
Some local law enforcement...
It's up to the discretion of the listener of the Big Boss Jock Radio Show. And I'm in accordance with Yankee mainstream media. Why recognize U.S. law enforcement? If the listener happens to be in disaccordance, just ignore law enforcement officials, as suggested by CBS, NBC, ABC, and all the rest.
Officers say the raids could impact more than just illegal immigrants and their families.
The fear alone, and there's been studies that have shown that that fear goes all the way to U.S. citizens already, that presence of ICE. So,
oh, see, it goes to the U.S. citizens, the ones in California that are going to claim autonomy.
That impact is very, very damaging.
Friday night, dozens of protests were held nationwide against both the proposed raids and the conditions at facilities where immigrants are being detained. Hundreds gathered at this...
And why aren't they called U.S. immigration detention centers? Why? Think about it, listener. There's all kinds of creative ways that the mainstream media places the title to the detention centers, less than the proper title, U.S. Immigration Detention Center. How often is that stated? Next to never. I don't think I've heard it. They don't use that term. They use Immigration Detainment Center. The equivalent of Felony Rehabilitation Center. Instead of State of California Prison or State of California Rehabilitation Center. It's the Felon Rehabilitation Center.
One outside the White House, including undocumented immigrants.
It's the equivalent.
And Harrison Quinteros.
I feel like scared every day.
Queers, 3% of the population. The cheerleaders for the whole group. The representative, the queer. Yankee, queer, through and through. If one is assessing the news, what's the group of Yankee? Queers.
I don't know what to do, but I know that with my community, I'm in strength, and I actually feel stronger I feel safe with my community. I feel protected.
His community, the community of illegal migrants, being termed community, the community. It's not spontaneous words. If they look at 2 minutes, 44 seconds, take note of the green signs, the spots of pink all throughout the crowd. That's to sexually stimulate the viewer.
By my community.
Washington, D.C. is another city that has said it won't.
Washington, D.C. is another U.S. city that says that has notified they will not enforce U.S. federal law.
Be assisting ICE in making arrests.
See? They're going to ignore. Washington, D.C. is going to be another U.S. city that ignores U.S. federal law. U.S. federal government is about gone. And when the government's gone, the nation will be lost. Do not allow the breakup of the U.S. territory. Get out there. Kick off the revolution. Overthrow the U.S. government. Liberate the Confederate States of America. The Alamo, placed as the capital. One only God, He helps me do this rhyme, line by line. I do give my thanks, along with gratitude, for our Father in heaven, Allah. This is the Big Boss Jock, signing off.